on there, YouTube fans? Welcome back. As I said in my last video, the paintball gun has kind of gotten put away for a little while because of all that white stuff out there. But I've moved on to a different subject, which is my other vice, and that is all my film collectibles and memorabilia. Today I'm going to talk about another one of my favorite collectibles, but I'm going to do it a little differently. I'm not going to talk about the item itself. I'm actually going to use the item to talk about something completely different. As you can see here, I've got the Back to the Future DeLorean time machine. It's got its wheels are folded down in flight mode. I would have taken it off this little stand here, but it's actually quite hard. It's got one screw that just never wants to give loose, you know. It's got tons of amazing detail, though. I mean, I like it on the stand because it's flying, you know. There's no point in seeing it not flying if you have that option. All the doors and the little trunks and stuff open up. This is made from a company called Sunstar. You know, that's all you really need to know about it. The wheels do fold up by a little switch here on the bottom, but I can't really reach it right now, and we'll deal with that later. So yeah, that's all you really need to know about this die-cast metal car, 1/18th scale, that kind of facts, but whatever. What I wanted to talk to you about today was actually the Back to the Future trilogy. That is one of my favorite films growing up. I used to love it. Most of the screenplays I've written have something to do with time travel in them because of that. Well, I guess not most, but I definitely like that subject. I do a lot of research on it, and once I researched it a bit, I started to realize how many actual mistakes these movies made. I still love them for it, but it's all meant in good fun, and I know they're just movies. But I wanted to talk about one of the mistakes, and one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to leave out facts. I didn't do a lot of research on purpose because I don't want to talk about what scientifically and what mechanically, knowing what the car is made of, we want to talk about because there's variables we don't know. So I'm only going to talk about what's in the film. What I do want to get into, though, is actually the third movie, you know, as you can see here.
This summer, Marty and Doc go back one more time for their greatest adventure of all. Doc's living in the past.
Just try it, Tanner!
And I'm going to talk about what happens in the third movie, and then while I'm talking about it, I'm going to use this as kind of a demonstration point, use it to show you what I'm talking about, and that will help you understand it a little bit better about a big mistake I found about that movie. Now, at the end of the movie, I got all upset, you know, the DeLorean was destroyed. I was more upset that the DeLorean was destroyed than I was that Doc Brown was stuck in the past. I could care less about Doc Brown, but I was like, the time machine's destroyed? So, I had a big issue with it once I realized a certain something. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. Now, as you guys remember, if you've seen the movies, of course, in the second movie, the Doc Brown is flying around in his little time machine. It's just like this. The wheels are down. It's all hovering and stuff, and all of a sudden, it gets struck by lightning, and pow! And it's gone. Marty is distraught because the DeLorean has just vanished. He thinks it's just blown up and the Doc is dead and everything. And then he gets this letter from the past that tells him that the Doc is perfectly fine and living in 1885. Now, Marty is currently stuck in 1955 and he needs to get back to 1985. But the only DeLorean that's working is now here. In 1885. Now, the Doc sends him a letter saying that certain parts have been destroyed, that the flight circuits have been destroyed. So on that note, he can no longer fly, so there, that's better, it's more like it. He also says he can no longer go through time because one of the circuits was fried, so he can't go back to 1985. So what does he do? He takes the DeLorean, he backs it into a little gold mine that he happens to know still exists, and he leaves it. He tells Marty very specifically in the letter that it should still be there, and if they go, they open up the cave, and then voila, it's still there. Now you might notice this is a bit different than the Time Machine DeLorean, and there's two very good reasons why. Number one, when they open the cave, the car is very different. It's been sitting for 70 years. The tires were all rotted off. I would assume that if anything else, rubber would have rotted off as well. And then they had to put it back together. You'll remember in the third movie they had the little vacuum tube circuit board on the top to fix one microchip, which I always thought was funny. The doc's refueling it, so all the fuel must have evaporated. And he's done various other repairs, and that's why it has the classic white-walled tires. Now, obviously, this doesn't have the circuit on the front or the things on the back or the white-walled tires, and that's because reason number two why this car is so different, and I only have one model of the Time Machine. I did happen to have a DeLorean model that they made long before they made the Time Machine one, so I was using that. But just for the sake of argument, pretend this is the DeLorean from Back to the Future 3 with all the stuff on it. So, they get that thing working again, but then they discover, oh gosh, they find a tombstone of Doc Brown. He dies a week after he sent the letter. So that means that they have to go back and save him. So instead of taking this DeLorean back to 1985, where Marty exists, or should exist, he now has to go back to 1885. And so he gets it all ready, he does the famous scene, and voila, he's in 1885. But there's a problem. In his driving around in the no longer paved roads of 1885 in the dirt, being chased by Indians and the cavalry, and he rips the fuel line and loses all the gas. This later becomes an incident when he meets up with Doc Brown, and Doc says that no gas in 1885. They have no way to get up to 88 miles an hour. We all know how this turns out. They go through a whole bunch of tests. They eventually put the train on the tracks. And when they get the train on the tracks and they're ready to go back to 1985, all the crap happens, but Marty gets through and he goes from there back to there, and then the train comes, smashes the DeLorean. Doc Brown stays in 1955 and with his wife. But then they build the train time machine. But here's the problem. Now we're going to rewind a little bit and take this guy back from 1985 back to 1955, and let's go through all those tests that they're performing to try to get the car up to 88 miles an hour. Sorry. They do the horses. They talk about rolling it down a hill, and eventually they get to the train, which is extremely hard to get up to 88 miles an hour. But as you can see by my little diagram here, they forgot something. What about this car? The whole time that they're dealing with this car, this one is still sitting in the cave. And you're thinking, what are you talking about? Well, this car sits in that cave until 1955, and Marty brings it back to 1955. That means that the whole movie, there are two DeLoreans. Well, why don't they ever talk about that? Why don't they ever go back to this car? Why don't they ever siphon the fuel out of it? I mean, they could do that. And I know what you're going to say. Well, if they siphon the fuel out of it, then when they get the car in 1985, it's going to be out of fuel. Well, duh, I already said that. They filled the tank up right before they took off. Also, why didn't you take the fuel line off of it? If the tires in 1955 were all molded away and had to be replaced, then odds are the fuel line had to be replaced as well. And you say to yourself, well, not necessarily, if it wasn't rubber. Yeah, okay. But again, I don't know what the DeLorean fuel tank construction is. Hell, it might not even be accurate because he's done a lot of things to this car. He's got all this stuff on it. It's got flying ability. So maybe it's something else. But whatever it is, it's easily tearable. He tears it. So it's obviously not metal. So, yeah. So why didn't they just go ahead and take the fuel line? Odds are Doc Brown was going to have to replace it in 1955 anyways. And then on that note, if you're really concerned about, okay, don't take parts off the car. There's a scene in the movie where they try to use really hard liquor to get the car going. So if they tried to use really hard liquor, then obviously somehow they fixed the fuel line. Sure, you just use some leather and a patch. Fine. So then again, going back to all we need is the fuel. So why didn't they just try to siphon the fuel out of that? I mean, it's 88 miles an hour. You just need to do it once. I mean, it could be, you know, just half a gallon, just a little bit. You don't even need to take all of it. Just whatever's, just a tiny little bit, enough to get the car started at least. And then after that, they're good as golden. I mean, the problem I have with this, I know that you can throw a lot of arguments at me, but they never consider it in the movie. It never mention it. And as a writer, I know what happens when you're writing something and you realize, oh, this is a plot hole and I got to patch it up real quick. And if anything, they could at least just thought of that, mentioned it, come up with some sort of scientific reason why it wouldn't have worked. They could have made something up. No one knows the difference. So, I mean, it's just kind of sad that they never considered it, and now, to me, it's always going to be in the back of my brain that, hey, the DeLorean didn't have to be destroyed, Doc Brown didn't have to stay in the past. I know that things supposedly all ended well for everybody, but it would have ended a lot better if they still had the DeLorean and could do more stuff and more movies, and at least had a flying car in 1985. Who wouldn't want it? It's 2011, we still don't have flying cars. Yeah, I mean, that alone was worth it. And then, you know, not only that, I mean, there's 1,000 other ways they could have done it better, too. I mean, it's time travel. Time was relative, so send another letter. And, you know, they didn't even have to bother too many people. They could have bothered, there's a whole period of time from the first movie to the second movie where the Doc Brown apparently goes into the future, researches a bunch of stuff, gets flying parts put on the DeLorean, does all this stuff, and then we catch up with him later, meeting up with Marty to go say, hey, go get your kids. Anywhere in there would have been a good time to send some sort of note or letter to catch him while he's going on in all these exploits to go, hey, while you have a flying, working DeLorean, come back here with some gas. That'd be great. Or just come pick us up and drop us off in our own time. We'll leave the DeLorean there. It doesn't matter. Who cares at that point in time, right? Time is relative. They could have done anything. I mean, if anything, they were fine once they stopped Griff or Mad Dog or whatever from killing them. I mean, they stopped him. He was arrested at the end. After that point in time, they had all the time in the world. They could have waited. They could have done all sorts of stuff. They didn't have to deal with the train. They didn't have to go do all that. They could have done anything, whatever. They could have been like, oh, well, let's go get some gunpowder and make a rocket. And oh my God, the Chinese were making like fireworks and stuff back then. They even show fireworks.
Let the festivities begin!
Why didn't they strap rockets to the back of the thing? Come on, people. This isn't rocket science. I mean, it kind of is rocket science, but I mean, there's so many other ways they could have done it. They went the hardest route. I mean, they had the car on the tracks. Just go get some of those Chinese workers to make them some fireworks. I mean, oh well. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I should be back again soon, hopefully next week, and maybe sooner than next week. Got a lot of props I can still talk about, a lot of things, and a lot of fun I can have with these videos. So, thank you for watching. Thanks for your continued support.